Introduction. This is House of Stamina, managed by two brothers, Ifeanyi Chukwu and Nwabueze Mbamara, present a gift of enlightenment titled Movement Against Mental Slavery. Please watch this with open mind. Let truth be our guide. Thanks.
What is colonization?
Colonization is a baptized name for slavery. It is quite funny that when we talk about colonization, it is assumed that blacks alone are colonized. The fact is that the world is under the siege of slavery. If not for mental slavery, how is it that the whole countries of the world are in debt, and who are the lenders? The slave masters, those behind world organizations like World Bank, United Nations, IMF, etc. They determine the pace of every economy. They use different slogans like austerity measure, SAP, structural adjustment program, Operation Tighten Your Belt, economic meltdown, and now recession, to create suffering by inserting artificial scarcity into the minds of the people when what is available is more than enough for everybody. They use international standards and best practices to approve whatever they want to approve, no matter how injurious it is, and to reject whatever they want to reject, irrespective of how beneficial it may be. When we talk about slavery, physical slavery is being condemned by all as the most heinous crime against humanity. Yet, it is nothing compared to mental slavery that is ravaging the world today.
Are we mentally enslaved?
Yes, think outside the box is trending because we are boxed. We are like those trying to uproot a tree by cutting its branches, which only deepens the root of the tree. How can we think outside the box when we are still in the box? We must get out of the box. When we get out of the box, automatically we think outside the box. Slavery seems to be man enslaving another, but it is man enslaving himself. He who is not a slave cannot enslave another. Our action to enslave another deepens our own slavery. We are aware of being colonized, but we are not aware of being decolonized.
Are we not decolonized?
Yes, we are not decolonized because without the desire to be decolonized, we cannot be free from colonization. If we are not decolonized, we are slaves.
How can we put a stop to this slavery?
We can only put a stop to this slavery when we are able to understand the essence of colonization. Then we can see the consequences of colonization in our day-to-day lives. Just by seeing it exactly the way it is, it crumbles because it is based on falsehood. Just like a mistake ceases to be when it is known.
What is the essence of colonization?
The essence of colonization is to change everything about us from natural to artificial, from truth to falsehood. They took away our active lifestyle and replaced it with sedentary. They alter our cravings for natural medicinal food and replace it with cravings for artificial poisonous food. They took away our communal lifestyle, which is one for all and all for one, that is based on unity, which is unlimited, and replace it with individualistic lifestyle, which is me and mine, that is based on competition, which is extremely limited. We wonder why it seems we are all limited. They took away our meaningful names that reflects who we are, like Ifeanyi Chukwu, Nwabueze, Ayomidele, and replace it with meaningless names that distract us from who we are, like John, Mary, and Ibrahim, etc.
Is there any other essence of colonization?
Yes, the main essence of colonization is to keep us ever divided for easy exploitation and indoctrination in order to create us according to their own image and likeness, which is a life of greed, covetousness, and falsehood, a life totally based on propaganda, an empty life of make-believe, which is trending now as packaging for the continuation of their agenda.
Are we still under the grips of colonization?
Yes, we are still under the grips of colonization because our forefathers were killed, hypnotized, and forced to accept the pillars of slavery. Our founding fathers, like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Sir Tafawa Balewa, and Pa Jeremiah Awolowo, etc., were brainwashingly trained to maintain the status quo. This has passed from generation to generation till date. There is no difference between our founding fathers and our leaders of today. Also, we, the followers, because we are all products of slavery.
Why do you say we are all product of slavery?
If we are not slaves, why is it being taught in our schools that our founding fathers forced the colonial masters out of our countries? The same way it is believed that we elect our leaders. This is one of their lies, parading as truth, in order to prevent us from knowing exactly what really happened and what is happening now. Because if we do, we are out of their bondage. A lot of us believe this lie, and I wonder how we think. This falsehood is still being celebrated in the world today as independent days, mainly by the colonial pillars to prevent us from independence.
What are the pillars of colonization?
The pillars of colonization are their own brand of religion, their own brand of education, and their own brand of governance. Their own brand of religion is based on falsehood and propaganda. This falsehood and propaganda in religion has risen to a point where followers are so ashamed to associate themselves with religion. This is why you hear Christians and Muslims say that Christianity and Islam are not religion, but ways of life. Religion that preaches about the past and the future and nothing for now, yet now is the only time. A religion that preaches about the day of judgment as a ploy to deny us the knowledge that every action has its own instantaneous reward. With this understanding, we have no option than to stop doing evil. This ploy has deceived almost all of us to live a sinful life with the intention to repent before the judgment day, without knowing that life is pay as you go. Their own brand of education is brainwash education. Education that teaches us a lot of things, but nothing about ourselves. If we don't know anything about ourselves, we know nothing. For example, how to think. If we don't know how to think, how can we ask the right question? If we don't ask the right questions, how can we get answers or solutions? This is why our educated ones have no clue about the source of their problems, talk less of proffering solutions to the problems of the country. Their own brand of governance is based on propaganda, a government that exploits and corrupts its citizenry. These pillars cannot stand the test of time as a result of false foundation. The collapse of these pillars are so glaring, yet the custodians of these pillars are trying to ride a dead horse.
Who are the custodians of these pillars?
The custodians of these pillars are religious leaders, academicians, politicians, and government workers. They found themselves in an unjust system that programmed them as a tool for exploitation. They are so busy scheming and strategizing ways of perpetuating this exploitation because they assume they are benefiting, without knowing that none can benefit from exploitation. They are fully aware that these pillars cannot stand the test of time.
Why do you say that these pillars are already collapsed?
They are already collapsed because religion that seems to be the basis of morality and spirituality has proved to be the source of immorality and materialism. Religious centers have turned out to be entertainment and skill acquisition centers where we listen to CEOs of companies, businessmen and women, entertainers of all sorts as role models to their followers, without any concern about the lifestyle and influence of these characters to their followers. The more the number of churches and mosques, the more the decadence in our society. Also, education that seems to be the solution to our problems and the source of employment has proved to be the obstacle to our solution and the major source of unemployment. The more graduates we roll out, the more we strengthen the tension of joblessness and frustration in our society. Also, the government that seems to protect and provide for the people are killing and exploiting the people. The system of governance is deliberately programmed by the slave masters in such a way that no matter who we are and how saintly we may be, we are celebrated into offices and disgraced out of offices with shame and regret. This is why we are always in a haste for a change of government before expiration without minding the type of change.
How is religion one of the pillars of slavery?
Their own brand of religion is the number one pillar of slavery because it is the foundation of our belief system. Our minds are programmed by our beliefs, and the greatest weapon in the hands of slave masters is the minds of slaves. Manipulating our minds with different types of religious indoctrination and denomination have continually kept us divided, confused, and undecided. This is why religious people seek help from other religions like Christianity, Islam, witch doctors, star readers, shrines, and occultic groups, etc. This has led to promotion of lies like money rituals, using of human parts, marine spirits, terrestrial spirits, witches and wizards, etc. Religion is the most effective instrument in the hands of slave masters to keep us ever divided. Religious division is the foundation of racial and tribal discrimination. For instance, when we are addressed by our race or tribe, like black man, white man, Igbo man, Yoruba man, or Hausa man, there is no cures. But when we are addressed religiously, like infidel or unbeliever, there is cures.
What is belief?
Belief is what we accept to be true. Most of what they force on us as truth are false. For example, they taught us that we inherited sin and none is righteous, that our righteousness is self-righteousness. They also taught us that those who are enjoying sinful life now will suffer at the end in hellfire, and those who are suffering in righteousness now will enjoy at the end in heaven. As if it is very easy and satisfying to live a sinful life and very difficult and unsatisfying to live a righteous life. This is an illicit agenda to present sin as pleasurable and to project living aright as difficult, so that we will accept sin as normal instead of rejecting it. If we don't deliberately stop doing evil, how can we know the benefit of a righteous life and the consequences of a sinful life? Until we deliberately avoid doing evil, we will never know when we are right or wrong. If we don't know when we are right or wrong, we are proud to be unrepentant sinners, which is trending now among religious people. You hear them say, "I am a sinner." We are all sinners. Remember, a sinner is always guilty, and a conscience laden with guilt is a troubled mind indeed. We wonder why we are so troubled. This is why a typical religious person's relationship with God surrounds sins and begging endlessly for forgiveness of sins through prayers, confessions, penance, and fastings, etc.
Why is it that religious people beg endlessly for forgiveness of sins?
They beg endlessly for forgiveness of sins because of false beliefs. False belief is the cause of lethargic thinking. Belief is be and live according to what we accept to be true. When we believe that we inherited sins and have no power of our own over sins, we have no option than to beg endlessly for forgiveness of sins, even when we are not aware of the sins we committed. Also, we are taught that nobody is perfect, as if perfection is a destination, whereas it is only but a journey. If we believe this lie, how can we strive for perfection? Without striving for perfection, there can be no excellence. The essence of this lie is to prevent us from living aright. So be careful what you believe, because our minds are colonized and indoctrinated from birth. It behoves on each and every one of us to undergo a personal search for truth, to cast off lies and distortions from the colonial history books and their sacred books, or else we will be hurting ourselves without knowing we are hurting ourselves.
Is it possible for us to hurt ourselves without knowing that we are hurting ourselves?
Yes, it is possible, because suffering is a choice. If we know why we are suffering and have the courage to make amendments, the suffering will cease. But if we don't know why we are suffering and are focusing on things that have nothing to do with the suffering will persist. For instance, we in Nigeria are suffering not as a result of lack of resources or lack of manpower, but as a result of the presence of colonial pillars that deny us access to do the right things. We cannot keep doing the wrong things without suffering. These pillars are existing as a result of our unanimous support, and the only radical solution is withdrawal of our individual supports. Once it is withdrawn, the pillars crumbles and suffering ceases. Also, if we believe that someone can remote us to suffer, either from near or far, as being preached by the religious leaders, our suffering will persist, because, in reality, none can remote another to suffer unless one believes it. Belief is a force created by us and accepted by us to control our lives by its principles. For instance, if we believe the story of Satan and his agents, we cannot be free from his manipulations and torments. But if we do not believe, we are free from all his activities. Watch out for Volume 2, where we discuss belief in Satan and his consequences.